Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and thank you for joining us today. We have a brand new story to share with you, one that unfolds with raw emotions, hidden truths, and life-altering decisions. So, let's begin. Charles and Ivanka had been married for several years. From an outsider's perspective, they appeared to be the perfect couple. Two people working toward a future together, sharing their lives and supporting each other. However, beneath the surface, their marriage was anything but perfect. Behind closed doors, their relationship was riddled with tension, arguments, and an ever-growing emotional gap that neither of them seemed capable of bridging. Charles was deeply in love with his wife, despite their struggles. He wasn't flawless, but he was dedicated. He worked tirelessly, striving to provide for their future, holding on to their shared dream of buying a house. One he envisioned as their sanctuary, a place where they could finally find stability. To him, this goal was more than just an investment. It was a promise of a better tomorrow. But Ivanka saw things differently. One evening, what began as a minor disagreement quickly escalated into something much more significant. Charles had just returned home from work, exhausted and hoping for a quiet evening, but the air was already thick with tension. Ivanka had asked for something, a purchase, a favor, perhaps an experience, and Charles had gently reminded her that it was not financially feasible at the moment. To Ivanka, this was just another excuse. The conversation spiraled, the underlying resentments bubbling to the surface, turning a simple discussion into a heated argument that laid bare their deeper issues. Ivanka's voice was sharp, her tone cutting. She had a way of making Charles feel inadequate, as if he was always falling short, no matter how much effort he put in. "Why do I have to explain this to you over and over again?" she snapped, rolling her eyes in frustration. Charles took a deep breath, trying to remain composed. "Ivanka, I'm trying here. I really am. But it feels like no matter what I do, it's never enough for you." Ivanka let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Trying? That's what you call this. This isn't trying, Charles. This is just you doing the bare minimum and expecting me to be grateful for it." Her words cut deeper than she realized. Charles felt a pang of frustration and hurt rising within him. Bare minimum? He wanted to remind her of everything. The long hours at work, the careful budgeting, the sacrifices he had made. But what was the point? She wouldn't see it. She never did. The most painful part wasn't even the argument itself. It was the dismissive way she treated his efforts as if they were insignificant. Something inside him snapped. Grabbing his keys, he turned toward the door. He needed air, space. Anything to escape the suffocating feeling of never being enough. "I can't do this right now," he muttered as he stepped outside, leaving Ivanka standing there unmoved. He had no idea that this night would change everything. Charles hadn't gone far when he realized his mistake. In his rush to leave, he had forgotten his wallet and knew he couldn't get far without it. With a sigh of frustration, he turned back toward the house, determined to slip in quietly, grab his wallet, and leave again before another confrontation could arise. As he stepped inside, he moved as silently as possible. But then he heard Ivanka's voice. She was on the phone. At first, he paid little attention, focused only on retrieving his wallet and leaving. But then her words struck him like a bolt of lightning, stopping him in his tracks. "I settled for less." A chill ran down his spine. His heartbeat quickened, pounding against his ribs as his fingers hovered over his wallet. He shouldn't listen. He should just leave. But something in her tone, something almost wistful, almost regretful, held him in place. "I should have been with Dean," she continued, her voice carrying a weight of longing. "But I needed stability." Charles felt the air drain from the room. She kept speaking, unaware that he was standing mere feet away, frozen in place. "Charles is a good man, but not the one I truly wanted from the start." Everything suddenly made sense. The forced affection, the constant arguments, the way she had always seemed distant. It had never been about finances or effort. It had never even been about Charles. She had never truly loved him. He had been nothing more than a safe choice, a fallback option. His hands trembled as he picked up his wallet and quietly left, closing the door behind him without making a sound. He walked aimlessly down the street, the cool night air doing nothing to numb the pain clawing at his chest. Eventually, he found himself at a bar. It wasn't a place he usually went, but at that moment, it didn't matter. He just needed somewhere to sit, somewhere to think, somewhere to let the crushing truth sink in without completely suffocating him. He ordered a beer, took a sip, and let the bitterness settle on his tongue. But it couldn't compare to the bitterness he felt inside. She had never truly wanted him. All those years, he had fought for a future with her, convincing himself that their struggles were temporary, that their love was worth every sacrifice. But it had all been meaningless. She had settled for him, and in doing so, had trapped him in a marriage built on nothing but convenience. The thought of confronting her crossed his mind. But why? What would he say? That he knew the truth? That he had heard every word? She might apologize, maybe even cry, but it wouldn't change the reality. Her heart had never belonged to him. As he stared into his drink, a quiet but drastic decision took root in his mind. He would leave, not just for the night, not just to cool off, but for good. He would disappear, erase every trace of himself from her life, and give her exactly what she wanted. The freedom to be with the man she had always wished for. By morning, he would be gone. That night, as Ivanka slept peacefully, unaware of the storm she had unleashed, Charles sat before his laptop. If she wanted to be with someone else, he wouldn't stand in her way. But he wouldn't walk away empty-handed either. He logged into their joint savings account. It was easy. He had always been the one managing their finances. The numbers on the screen stared back at him, a sum they had been saving to buy a house. He took what was rightfully his, 80% of the funds, the portion he had contributed alone. But he didn't withdraw cash. Instead, he moved the money strategically, purchasing resellable assets, electronics, rare collectibles, valuable items that could easily be liquidated later. He left no trace, deleting every transaction record from his emails, ensuring that Ivanka would never track his next move. By the time dawn broke, Charles was already gone, leaving behind nothing but the empty shell of a marriage that had never truly existed. With quiet efficiency, Charles turned his attention to what came next. He methodically packed only the essentials, important documents, a modest selection of clothing, and anything that would help him start over elsewhere. He felt no attachment to the sentimental items that once held meaning. There was nothing left worth holding on to. His heart had already severed those ties. Before leaving, he sat at the desk, staring at the blank sheet of paper in front of him. He didn't need to write much. The truth had already been spoken, just not directly to his face. With a steady hand, he picked up the pen and wrote, "I overheard everything. I won't stand in the way of your happiness. Go settle with your ideal partner. No accusations, no dramatic farewell, just a simple and final goodbye." By morning, Charles was gone. Ivanka woke up expecting another ordinary morning, but as her gaze landed on the note resting on the table, her stomach dropped. Panic surged through her veins as a realization hit. He knew. He had left. And this wasn't a temporary retreat. This was final. She had driven him away without even realizing it. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her phone, dialing his number in rapid succession. Each call met with the same result, disconnected. She frantically opened her email, typing out a desperate message, only to be met with an immediate response, undelivered. Dread settled over her as she turned to social media, searching for any trace of him. He was gone. His profiles had vanished as if he had never existed. Desperation clawed at her as she called his workplace, grasping for any hope that he had simply gone there instead. Hours passed before she finally got through. The receptionist's casual response crushed any lingering hope she had left. "Oh, Charles? He resigned this morning. Sent an email before office hours. Effective immediately." Ivanka's grip tightened around her phone. He had planned this. This wasn't an impulsive decision in the heat of the moment. He had taken deliberate, calculated steps to erase himself from her world entirely. He had vanished, leaving nothing behind but a note and the consequences of her own words. She had spent so long taking Charles for granted, assuming he would always be there, but now, standing in the empty house he once called home, she realized she had pushed him too far, and there was no undoing it. With Charles gone, Ivanka no longer had to hide. There was no more secrecy, no need to pretend. She turned fully to Declan, the man she had convinced herself was her true choice. Their once secret affair was now out in the open, unhindered by guilt or a husband standing in the way. At first, it felt liberating. Dean was everything Charles wasn't: exciting, passionate, spontaneous. He whispered sweet words and reassured her that she had made the right choice. This was the life she thought she wanted, the life she believed she deserved. A few months after Charles disappeared, Ivanka filed for divorce. With no response from him, the court issued a default judgment in her favor. Just like that, she was single, legally free to move forward with her new life. For a time, everything seemed perfect, but slowly, cracks began to show. Dean was charming but distant. He was present in the ways that mattered least, through words, surface-level affection, but absent when it came to real commitment. Whenever she brought up their future, he dodged the conversation, changing the subject with a smile that no longer felt as reassuring as it once had. Then, the truth began to unfold. Dean was not as devoted as she had assumed. He entertained other women, maintained relationships outside of theirs, and never saw her as his priority. The passionate love she believed she had chosen over Charles turned out to be nothing more than a fleeting illusion. Slowly, the comparisons crept in. The things she once resented about Charles now reappeared in a different light. Charles had been reliable, steadfast, and willing to fight for their marriage. He had sacrificed his comfort, dreams, and financial stability to build something solid with her. Dean, on the other hand, had offered her nothing but temporary excitement. There was no foundation, no stability, no genuine partnership, because in truth, they had been building nothing at all. And then, the realization hit her. She had never truly settled for less. Instead, she had thrown away something real for an illusion. What she had with Charles wasn't perfect, but it was genuine. What she had with Dean was everything she thought she wanted, yet it was never meant to last. Years passed. Ivanka remained single. The man she once believed to be her true love, her ideal partner, never became what she had expected. Dean avoided any real discussions about marriage. Whenever she brought it up, he brushed it off, changed the subject, or dismissed it entirely. At first, she convinced herself it was just a matter of timing, that eventually he would commit to her the way she had abandoned everything for him. But as the years dragged on, the truth became undeniable. Dean was never serious about her, and worse, he never asked her to leave Charles in the first place. Whenever they argued, he never failed to remind her of one painful truth. "I never asked you to leave your husband." That sentence cut her deeper than she ever thought possible. Humiliation burned through her as she realized he was right. She had walked away from a man who had loved her unconditionally, believing she was choosing something better. But all she had become was one of Dean's many options. And now, the thoughts of Charles came in waves. She found herself wondering where he was, if he had moved on, if he had found happiness with someone else. Had he built the life they had once planned, but with another woman? The more she tried to push those thoughts away, the stronger they became. She had a man who had loved her, a man who had wanted to build a future with her, and she had thrown it all away for someone who never saw her as more than a passing thrill. And that's the story. So, what can we learn from this? Sometimes, we don't realize the value of what we have until it's gone. It's easy to overlook the efforts of someone who truly cares, only to regret it when they are no longer there. People often chase what they think they want, believing something better is waiting, only to realize they already had everything they needed. Words have power. The things we say about our partners, especially when we think they aren't listening, can either strengthen or completely break a relationship. Love isn't just about emotions or excitement. It's about trust, respect, and genuine companionship. If those things are missing, no amount of passion can make up for it. If you don't appreciate someone's presence, you may have to deal with their absence. Charles walked away, not out of anger, but because he understood that staying where he wasn't truly wanted would only cause more harm. Some believe in fighting for love no matter what. Others know when it's time to let go. So, what do you think? Did Charles make the right decision by leaving, or should he have stayed and fought for his marriage? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, take care and stay wise.